Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Gabesy here. We are going to play some more Hearthstone Arena. And the class I've selected this time is Druid. Just trying to get some variety in the runs that I've released in terms of class diversity. So, let's see how we can do here. Our first pick is Cold Light Oracle, which is a pretty bad card in almost every situation, at least for arenas, simply because it draws both players' equivalent cards. And since on the turn you play it, it costs you 3 mana, you're effectively at a deficit. You can't take advantage of those, as many of the potential draw cards that turn as your opponent would be able to on their next turn, because they would not be down to 3 mana. Plus, it's just a bad creature for the cost. So, unless you have a specific deck for this, it's not worth it. It Master is a pretty solid card all around. It's a 1/5 for 3, but it automatically will guaranteed summon a 1/1 imp and take 1 damage, so it'll be a 1/4 and a 1/1. So you can total that up to basically think of it as a 2/5 minion for 3 mana, which is solid. And then of course, if you're able to keep it alive all 5 turns, it's a 5/5. So it's pretty solid. That said, I think the best pick here is Nourish, because it can be difficult to come by draw mechanics for a Druid. Nourish is kind of their go-to draw card. That's not a neutral. And it's a really good one at that. Drawing 3 cards for 5 mana, you don't have to mess around with any other weird mechanics or anything like that. So it's solid. You don't have to wait till late game like a Rogue Sprint. But it's not, an early card that relies on other mechanics like Battle Rage for Warrior or something. Anyway, a lot of over-explanation there. Probably too much, my apologies, but I think that's the best pick there. All right, here this will be much faster. Shield Bearer is pretty terrible, unless you're a specific deck, perhaps a Priest, that can take advantage of the health. Elven Archer's okay. It's not great. Usually you want a 2/1 for 1 if possible. The dealing 1 damage can sometimes be great. I think the pick here is Reckless Racketeer. I also don't like this card very much, but the way I think of it is it's sort of like a 1-time 5 attack weapon for 6 mana, because it obeys, taunt mechanics. But usually it's going to die. So at least you don't have to take the damage. But usually you'll trade 1 card for their card, try to get a surprise attack. All right, here we have another couple poor choices. Geomancer, unless you really need spell damage, he just doesn't have the stats to warrant the selection. Southsea Deckhand, it would be all right if you had a specific pirate deck with weapons, pirate warrior deck or something like that. Then you could buff him. But otherwise, 2/1, even if he had charges, is okay, but not great. So the Berserker wins here, even though we already have 5 and a 6. These other 2 cards just aren't worth it. And we're likely to get better stuff later. When I say likely, I mean not this pick. This is bad. Innervate is... Some people really love this card. I personally hate it. I don't think it's worth a card, is the best way to describe it. If you're going to play Innervate, you need a lot of draw mechanics in your deck. So a lot of Nourishes, Acolytes of Pain, Cult Masters, all that good stuff. Because all this really does is extend your ability to play a more powerful card, obviously, on a particular turn by 2. And that can be good, especially if you go second. You have the coin, so you could get 3 mana extra on a particular turn, which can sometimes make or break the game. But the problem is you have to rely on getting the right combination of card with this, something that would actually turn the battle. So, if you had a great legendary drop, you get Hogger out, a few turns earlier, something like that. That'd be amazing. But otherwise, it's often just spending an extra card to not really gain any card advantage. You're just playing something early. Anyway, Patriarch is pretty weak. Again, his attack particularly is too low for 3 mana cost. And the taunt doesn't justify it. So in this case, we're going to go with the Priestess. Again, I already have some high-end stuff, but this is the best of these worst cards in this particular pack. So I still just want to go on record and say that a 6 mana cost 4 health minion is terrible. It will die to a number of 3 health drops, or 3 mana drops, rather, which is no good. Alright, well, finally we're getting some good cards. Fortunately, the one we're going to pick is probably the 5 mana one. Tidehunter is okay. Usually I prefer a 3/2 minion rather than this guy. It's effectively the same health. If you had the Murloc Scout, 3 attack, 2 health, but because it's split into 2, it means that it's more susceptible to Druid attack, the Mage Fire Blast, the Rogue attack, stuff like that. And then, of course, incidental damage that happens to do 1. Novus Engineer is a solid card. Basically you don't lose card advantage. So it's all right. Its attack is pretty low, though, so often you won't be able to kill something with it. So you're basically just distracting with it or doing 1 damage. Druid of the Claw is an exceptionally good card, though. The choice between a 4/6 for 5 with taunt or a 4/4 with charge is really awesome, and it gives you a lot of cool choices, depending on what's going on. So again, we're going to have to go high end, and hopefully we'll get some low end cards, but nope, doesn't look like it. So Young Priestess is okay. I would say it's one of the better 2/1 drops if you must get one, or if you like them for some reason. Giving a random friendly minion +1 health can be pretty awesome if you're able to protect it for a couple turns. So taunts with this are pretty strong. Commander is one of the best cards in the rare bracket in terms of neutral cards. Basically, it's effectively 4 damage for 6 mana, and because it has Divine Shield, you're left over with a 4/3 minion no matter what you attacked. So, and usually you're going to attack something and kill it with 4 damage. That's kind of the breaking point whether you can kill many things. So, for example, it could kill our Priestess, or our Druid of Claw if it's the charge version, or whatever, the Azure Drake. Anyway, the Drake is also a solid card, especially if you need spell damage. It also doesn't lose you card advantage. But in this particular case, we only have 2 6s, we have 3 5s, and I think the Argent Commander is slightly superior to this. Usually this gets a 2-for-1 and clears the board of something, whereas this can get a 2-for-1, but since you don't get attack initiative without charge, it lets the opponent respond. Okay, well, 3 Druid spells for our next pick. As much as I would like to get another Nourish, I can't afford that mana cost. So we're already 3 5s and 3 6s, so we need to go low end. Savagery, on the other hand, is not good enough. This was changed in the recent patch. It used to be really strong, and now it's quite weak. Basically, you can see it deals damage equal to your hero's attack to a minion. So it's kind of like, if you're using your hero ability and maybe a claw or something to buff or bite or something like that to buff it up, you might kill a minion, and then if you want to kill a second one, and you can't attack twice with your hero, so you'd use Savagery as a pseudo secondary attack without taking the damage. But obviously you're using a card for that, so you have to have the right scenario. And the problem is, default, without bite or claw or something, 1 damage is just not worth 1 card. That's what your hero power is normally going to be with this. So to that end, it's certainly not worth getting now before we have any of those other cards, and that means bite is the clear winner here. Basically 4 damage for 4 mana. Alrighty, well, some low-end cards at least, but they're not great. Naturalize is fairly weak, in my opinion. You destroy a minion outright for 1 mana and the card, but your opponent draws 2 cards in addition to that. So they get 1 card, the first card back to replace the card they lost that you destroyed, and then they draw an extra card on top of that. So the advantage that you give them is quite severe by doing this. Obviously, if it's really desperate, you can get rid of a minion, a legendary or something, but otherwise, this card's usually not worth it. Footman is terrible. You just should never pick him. 1/2 with, technically he has taunt, but he's almost has no ability. You're better off with a 1 mana minion that actually does something useful. So the Earthring Farseer is the best choice here. 3 for 3 is about average, and the restore 3 health can be cast on you, the hero, or a minion, so that can be useful. Okay, some more low-end cards, good thing. Jungle Panther's a solid 3-drop. He has 4 attacks, so he can often trade up, and he has stealth, so he gets attack initiative. Savage Roar is kind of the Druid version of Bloodlust. Gives all characters, including the hero, +2 attack, rather than 3 for just minions. So that can be pretty handy sometimes, but it's mostly a game finisher. If you're winning, or it's fairly even, but they don't have the ability to stop your attacks, you have a lot of minions, this can push it over the edge. But at this stage in our draft, I don't feel like I need this. I'm not comfortable picking this up until I know that the rest of our deck is solid. And in this case, Claw is a solid choice. This has a lot of flexibility in that you can just play it to basically do 2 damage if you want for 1 mana, or you can use 3 mana with your actual hero power and this to do 3 damage. So there's a bit of flexibility there. So Claw's a pretty good card. Ooh, well, we could go for second Nourish, but because of the... Well, actually, maybe I take that back. I was going to say that because of the quality of 5-drop minions, we need the Kodo. But the truth is that Berserker, while not great for Druid, is not bad, and the Druid Claw is really good. So the Stampeding Kodo is only good on 5 if playing it destroys an enemy minion with its Battlecry. If it doesn't, it's a pretty weak 5. Whereas Nourish can be great if we have a solid board and we can draw a bunch of cards off it. It's a tough choice, honestly. We could also get 2 mana crystals to play more late game, but we don't really have any late game beyond 5 or 6. So I guess I'll go Kodo, even though I think it's pretty close. Well, here we have Venture Co-Mercenary, which is... It's a pretty good 5-drop, or I'm going to say it's a really good 5-drop, if you can use it properly. And what I mean by that is if it doesn't get frozen or debuffed in some way, so its attack is really low, if it's not attacking weak minions, all that good stuff. Where it comes in to play is it usually should get 2-for-1 trades, because at 5 mana you can get tons of kills with a 7/6, at least 2 of them. However, if it does become frozen or incapacitated in some way, it's really bad. The 3 more mana cost for your minions can really put you behind. And this is kind of one of those cards that if the opponent responds properly, it can actually hurt you more than help you. So it's a risk anyway. The Booty Bag Bodyguard is weak. He simply doesn't have enough health for 5 mana. So you can see, in fact, Priestess of Elune is basically 1 more mana, the same stats. Obviously, she heals the hero, but it's not always great. But yeah, this guy just doesn't stand up to many lower cost minions. So we're going to go with the Razorfin Hunter here. In total, it's a 3/4 for 3, which is decent. Slightly weaker because it's split. But we need the lower mana cost cards. This is the only one here. Okay. Well, we have 2 pretty bad cards and 1 okay card. In addition, we need 2 drops. So Mark of the Wild, it's the better of the 2 buff cards, in my opinion, that the Druids can get. They also get I forget the name of it, but it's either 4 attack or 4 health plus taunt. But in this case, because it gives attack and health, often this means that you can get a favorable trade, whereas you may not be able to with the other card. It also costs less mana. And these guys just aren't good. All right, another solid 2-drop, which we have to get. Magma Rager is terrible. It's 1 health will mean it just dies to just about anything. You're never really going to be able to take advantage of its high attack. Voodoo Doctor is, again, kind of a weak 1-drop. You want a better effect if you're going to play a 1-drop minion. And Bomber is fantastic. It can often get 2-for-1 trades, especially if you play it after the opponent plays their 1 or 2-drop. If you get lucky, the bomber can kill it, and then it can kill something that they play the next turn. Okay, finally, some better cards. I was worried about our mana curve for a while. We've got Dark Iron Dwarf, which is a great 4-drop. The battle cry is amazing as long as you have your own minion out and you can buff it. Spellbreaker is also pretty good. The stats are a little bit under par, but this is probably the best form of silence that you can get. That's a neutral card anyway. And then the Raptor is just a standard 3/2 for 2. So usually there are better 2-drop minions if you can get them. So in this case, between these two, I like to have at least one silence in my deck. So as much as I like Dark Iron Dwarf, I think I have to go Spellbreaker here. Sometimes that silence makes all the difference in the world. Wow, this is tough. So we already talked about Claw. It's a solid 2 damage for 1 mana, or 3 damage for 3 mana. Wolf Rider is basically the 3 damage for 3 mana version of Claw, except you don't take damage as a hero. So as long as or I should say, if the minion that you are attacking has higher than 3 attack itself, then you'd be better off using a Wolf Rider than the Claw combination. On the other hand, if it has lower than that, then the Claw combination would give you a net gain because you would gain extra armor. So, kind of something to keep in mind. Anyway, the choice here is actually Starfire. In spite of my high mana curve, it's just too good to pass up. You do 5 damage for 6 mana. You don't need to obey targeting rules. You can even attack the hero, and you get your card back. So that's amazing. One of the best Druid cards, for sure. And speaking of high mana cost, we got to go with the Ironbark Protector here. He's kind of a well-known Druid card, and he's really the late-game card for Druids. Obviously, this is the kind of card that your opponent will expect and try to save their removal for. But if they don't have anything, he can be pretty strong. Snapjaw, its attack is pretty weak, so he's only really good in healer type decks like Priest. We talked about the Rocketeer. So we're going to go with the Protector. These are first 7+. Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, for this same reason that I don't really like Innervate, Wild Growth is different in that it's a permanent gain. But again, it does cost you a card. So you're still just moving your progression, your mana progression ahead a little bit. But if you consider that you have 30 cards in your deck, so by the time you hit turn 8, 9+, you're not even going to be through half your cards. So if you draw this card in the latter half of the game, or even the, say 2/3 of the way through, it's going to be completely wasted. I mean, well, I shouldn't say completely. You can actually play this. If you have full mana, you'll draw a card that gives you the ability to draw another card, so you don't lose it. But it's still not an amazing card, in my opinion. Anyway, we have the Grizzly, which is not good enough for 3-drop, and the Silverhand Knight, which is great. So in this case, I have to go Silverhand Knight. It's just too good to pass up. Whew. More 2-drops, which is what we need. So again, Silverhand Knight's awesome, but if you look at our mana curve, we have very few 4s and below. Now let's check how many things we'd actually play on turn 2. So far, just the Mad Bomber. Mark of the Wild, we wouldn't. How many spells do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So a little under a third of our cards so far are spells, which is a decent ratio. As much as I love Wrath, I think we need more actual 2-drops, stuff we want to play on 2. And Fairy Dragon's difficult to beat. It's one of the best because it can't be targeted by spells or, pinged by hero powers and stuff. So we're going to grab him. All right, well, all 1-drops. The good news is we got Worgen Infiltrator as one of them, which is one of the best 1-drops because it has stealth and it has 2 attack. You can often just keep it stealthed until you are able to trade up at some point later in the game. So he's the obvious choice. 2 pretty bad cards and 1 okay one. Arcane Golem just doesn't have enough going for it. to warrant the downside of the battle cry. It's basically 4 damage for 3 mana, which would be solid, but it has to obey attack rules. And the battle cry, giving your opponent a mana crystal, is downright bad. So this is almost never the proper card to pick in a rare choice if you're given, non-terrible stuff. Mana Addict, as you can see, the ability is when you cast a spell, it gains 2 attack for that turn only. So if this was just gains 2 attack, it'd be a pretty good card, especially for classes that have a lot of spells. But because it's only on the turn that you play it, you can't really make use of it in arenas especially. So Bite is the clear winner. Again, it's 4 damage for 4 mana, which is not a great ratio, and it takes our attack, but it's the best of these. Alrighty. Coldshire is terrible. Leper Gnome is okay, but not great. Don't really want the one. Bloodsail Raider, we're not going to have a weapon, but it is a 2/3 for 2, which is not awful. Preferably you want 3/2 instead of 2/3 in most cases, but this will work. Jeez. All right, well, Naturalize we talked about. Tarn Warrior doesn't have the stats that it needs to be 3 mana. If it was a 2, it'd be too strong. But as a 3, it's not good enough because it will die to many 2-drops that the opponent already has on the board. The Protector, again, is, I think, the clear choice. Again, we have quite a bit of late game, but he's much better than those two. Oh, God. Well, we're getting down to the wire here, and as much as these cards are quite good, I don't think I can afford that many late game cards. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cards at 5 or higher. And by comparison, I mean, look at our 3s. We have 2 3-drops, 3 2-drops with 1 that's a buff. It's awful. So because of that, I'm going to go against my previous advice and get Wild Growth. The only reason for this is that in a pinch, I can play this on 2 if I literally had nothing else to play, and it looks like that is very likely. So it wouldn't be the worst play in the world. It may give me the ability to swing the advantage back in my favor by giving me a turn ahead in mana curve. But usually you want to get something on the board or clear out their own minions. So I picked that in protest. All right, Moonfire is one of the worst Druid cards. You should never pick this card. 1 damage for a card is just not worth it, even for 0 mana cost. It's not like you're a warlock that can draw cards ad nauseum whenever you'd like. So it's just never worth it. War Golem is okay, but we definitely don't need the late game. We already have 2 Ironbark Protectors, which are much better. So we'll go with a Spellbreaker. It's a decent 4-drop and Silence. Wisp is awful. Just doesn't have the stats to compete with anything. Shieldbearer, we already talked about. Crusader is pretty good, actually. It often gets 2-for-1 trades. So we're going to grab that. And we need the 3. This draft is just no good. So basically 2 terrible ones, or not terrible, but pretty bad ones, and a 7, which we can't afford. So we have to go with the 1. So I think the Argent Squire beats out the Dragonhawk, unless you have buffs for the Dragonhawk. And at present, we only have 1 potential buff, which is unlikely. So the Squire can sometimes get 2-for-1 in terms of minions, depending on what your opponent played. If they play a 2/1, you can, sometimes trade it and kill it. So anyway, the Squire is slightly better in that particular situation. In our deck, if I was a hunter or a paladin, I'd probably go with the Hawk. All right, so Mark of the Wild again, Cult Master, which is solid, and Acolyte of Pain, which is solid. So it's really a matter of which of these card draws we think will give us more. Let's take a look at our low end. We really have very little low end here. which means that Cult Master would be a late game play if we played it. Because we're not going to play it on 4 unless we have something we can actually trade for one of their minions. And the chances of that, based on what we have, is pretty low. So if we played Cult Master late game, what would we have? Silverhand Knight. Priestess Rocketeer is pretty good for it. Argent Commander. So we can clear something out. That's alright. The other option is pick the Acolyte because it's a drop you'd actually be able to play on 3. And yeah. So I think Acolyte wins in this particular case. Bummer. Well, gotta go with the non-terrible card, which is the Silverhand Knight. Again, more 5s. And gotta go with a third claw. Oh no, it's second. I thought I got another one. Again, the bodyguard stats are too weak. The Dalaran Mage doesn't have enough attack to warrant 3. And we certainly don't have enough spell damage to, or I mean spells to warrant that. In fact, we only have Starfire as our direct damage, which is a little underwhelming considering our last pick is coming up. And here it is. Oh, it's pretty good though. We're gonna have to go with second Argent Commander because we have plenty of 5s. Swordsmith doesn't cut it. So look at this mana curve. It's a little scary. We have quite a few 1s, which can be a pseudo replacement for 2, but the problem is they have to actually allow us to trade. So Claw can trade if the opponent plays 3/2 minions, similar to the Worgen Infiltrator. But if they play 2/3s, we're going to be in trouble. What else? 2 Spellbreakers is pretty good. Our 5s are very solid. In fact, the Gurubashi is probably the weakest of our 5s, and he's not bad. Our 6s are pretty good. 2 Argent Commanders, a Starfire is really good. Priestess is bad. Reckless is okay, and then our late game for the Ironbarks is good. So I think the main problem is here we don't have any board clear. We don't have any swipes, we don't have any Starfalls. We only have 1 direct damage nuke, which is a Starfire. So it would have been ideal to either get some board clear or some more spells in terms of removal spells. We have a couple bites and a couple claws, which are spells, but because they require us to attack, it's not as good. We have to obey taunts, and we have to take damage, probably. Anyway, that was a lot of talking. I apologize. Okay, so we're going second. Game number 1 against Tyr the Mage. Can't afford these high-end cards, so we're going to keep the Bomber. He's great. Alright, that's much better. In fact, depending on what our opponent does, we may want to coin on 2 to play our 3-drop. Depends what he plays here and whether we think the Bomber's likely to kill whatever it is. Okay, he didn't play anything. So, in that case, let's see, if we coin now, we get a 3. Next turn we can play another 3. Or if we save the coin, yeah, I'm going to coin. Now the question is which of these to play. So the Hunter, the Boar, the 1/1 Boar would die to the Fire Blast. The Crusader, on the other hand, would lose its Divine Shield to Fire Blast, but then he would be at 1 mana. So this is the proper play unless we think that 1 mana would be Arcane Missiles, in which case he would take this down. Whereas the Hunter would not die to that. So I'm going to go with the Hunter. If he Fire Blasts, he's probably not going to be able to do anything else on the turn. So he has to decide to do that or not. And this should allow us to then get the Crusader out safely on this coming turn. Okay, well, Fortunately, that means our boar has to die. The other option would be to send the boar in and then mad bomber. But that's risky because this is going to be a 2/2 when it attacks. So I don't think that's the play. Position doesn't matter yet. So I'm going to attack with that and not this. Because again, I want to force him to make a decision if possible. Getting this to 1 health is irrelevant at this point. Unless he can completely freeze these with Cone of Cold or something. Okay. Wow, is he really going to kill that for me? That would be awesome. That's what I was going to do. Yeah, do that. Come on. Yes! Awesome. So the only thing, either that was a terrible mistake, or he's setting me up for, what's it called? Words. Arcane Explosion. And it could be Arcane Explosion, to be quite honest. In which case, I'm going to assume it is, in fact. And I'm going to silence this. And then I can send in these two to save the Divine Shield. Because that's a really... Again, it could be that he's just not great, or it could be that he was doing a really smart move. But this way I don't have to get rid of the Divine Shield, so I don't have 3 dudes at 1 health. Again, I don't know. We'll see. Or it could have been Arcane Missiles, which kind of would have been the same. So he's going to use that and be at 3. No, he's not. Yes, he is. And a Frostbolt? Yep. Okay. So that's fine. Our Spellbreaker prevented him from drawing off his Acolyte, and we got 1-for-1 card from it. So that was slight advantage. So obviously this is going to die to Fire Blast. He'll have 4 mana remaining. We're not quite at the stage where Flame Strike is possible. So I'm going to play these 2 guys, which is our strongest in terms of potential damage that we can put on the board. So Cone of Cold would be pretty strong here. Or a Blizzard. But because he... Well, actually that didn't tell me anything. Never mind. Okay, so there's the ping, which was expected. But our Crusader got 6 damage done to him. Okay, well... Flame Strike is very possible this coming turn. So let's think about this carefully. I could Hero Power and break the shield, take 3, and then kill it with this. That would be a 4/1, and he would ping it next turn. But that would only leave me with 4 mana. The other option is to hit the shield with this, and then bite. I think I'll Bomber, actually. It's a little riskier. Cool. Okay. So I was going to bite that thing, but now I'm going to trade this because I suspect a Flame Strike. Yeah, the Bomber play was very risky, but had a good reward. And if it hadn't hit the 4/4, then I probably still would have used Bite, actually. Well, maybe not.
Squire, attend me.
I'm not sure.
Ready, sir.
Okay. So, again, I want to keep my minion count pretty low while clearing the board every time if possible. So I think the play is to Argent Commander to kill that, send our 2/2 into his 2/2, and that will leave us with 2 mana, which we'll use on our hero power. We could also alternatively bite that. That would leave us with 4 mana, but we can't really do much with 4. And this will have put another minion on the board. And I don't have any reason to Mark of the Wild. If I did it on that, it would still be at 4 health, which would die to Flame Strike. This could survive it technically. It's not worth it if we're not doing a combo. Often you don't want to buff unless you're using it on that turn that you're doing the buff, because the opponent will then respond otherwise. You know, they could kill it or silence it or something like that. Okay, there's an Arcane Explosion, which he just drew, I believe. So if he pings that, it'll be at 4. There's the ping. No? Yes? What? So depending on what we draw, and what he does here actually, if he kills our minion, then we'll probably have to play a Berserker no matter what, so we have something on the board. If he doesn't kill it, then I might be able to Nourish, especially if I can buff this to kill whatever he plays. Wow, he sat on 4 mana. Interesting. Well, plans actually changed because I drew another 5. So next turn I'll have 10 mana, which means I can play a 5 and a 5, Nourish, and one of these 5s. So this turn, I will again take it easy and play a 5 and hero power. And if this guy had 1 health, I would probably Mark of the Wild it to save him from Fire Blast, but you can see, I mean, we're still at 30 health effectively. We're at full health. He's down to 12. Okay, so that's a good card. I don't have an easy way to do 1 damage without taking the hit myself. Let's see. So to clear the board, this guy has to die, because he either has to trade with the wolf, or he has to break the shield on that guy. Well, that's not true actually. I can draw to the claw. And I could buff him. But no, I think his health is weak enough. So I'm going to use him to break the shield. And I'm going to hero power and bite to kill that, and then this guy will be buffed. Look at that armor. So that was a 1. Well, he got 2 for 1, actually. But that's okay. Because I had to send my 4/2 to break the shield there. And there are a couple ways to do that. There was a buff here, and there was Druid Claw with charge if you wanted. But I wanted this guy to get buffed.
For the crusade!
Alright, Crusader. So he's facing 6 damage on the board, 7 with hero power, 9 with Mark of the Wild, and 13 with Druid of the Claw. So he has to play a taunt or kill something. Which, with 2 mana left, I doubt will happen. So I'm pretty sure that's game. Yep. Let's see, can we do exact? Oh, and we drew Starfire, so it didn't matter. 4, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Where shall I strike?
Yay! All right, well, I won't say that game went amazing for me, but obviously he didn't really put much pressure on us. It just felt a little slow.